So, over the last few years, we've heard a consistent message and a transformation that a lot of L&D departments want to make. And that transformation is to move from a course delivery oriented model to one that is skills or rather performance oriented. That move is quite challenging due to a number of reasons. And so, even as this was being discussed and a lot of L&D leaders wanted to make that shift, they were not able to do that or did not have a solid plan for implementing it due to technological constraints, the lack of buy-in, and so many other factors. Today, with the advancement in technology and AI, things are very different. And there is no better time than today to think about it. And I'm sure all of you who are attending this session are interested in making that shift and learning how to make that possible. So, while there's so much to talk about this shift, today's session is going to be focused on the technological aspect, or how can we make use of your own existing assets, upgrade them, not replace them, upgrade them to set up this learning ecosystem that works or that is designed to be a skills intelligence engine. And what I will do is invest next 30 minutes of time to walk you through how some of the key components of a skills intelligence engine can be developed or operationalized. So let's get started. But as we do that, I will put up a few questions that I want you to think about. Okay. So these questions will change in front of you on the screen. I want you to think about, what if this was possible? Okay. So as you've seen, each of these stakeholders want to see something which is important from their perspective. It's as if they have a beacon through which they can identify important things that matter to them. And therefore, we can expect their participation, support, collaboration, all of which is necessary to make this successful. We all know ultimately courses, tools, platforms, these don't help us achieve our objectives. It is what we do with them that helps us. And therefore, in a shift like this, it is very important to address the expectations of all our stakeholders in the best possible form to ensure that there is success, right? So, what do the executive leadership in the organization want to know about? They want to know, okay, this is my business plan for the year or the next 2-3 years. To achieve success with that, we need these kind of skills and capabilities in the organization. And they want to know where we stand in comparison with that. How well is the workforce prepared to implement the business plan and achieve the business objectives? Further, before they commit to a major investment or a change in the way the learning and development operations work, they also want to see what is it that they would get in return, what kind of oversight they can have, what can they expect in terms of outcomes. The L&D leaders, of course, want to have the seat at the table, as they say, be able to contribute positively to the organizational success and achieve that by doing all that we're going to discuss in the next 20-25 minutes. The managers, they have certain business goals. They succeed with the help of the team members, and they want to know how well their team is prepared. How can they improve their team skills? What is it that they can do to support and push the initiative forward, and so on? When it comes to individual learners, it is important that we transparently let them know what is expected from them based on their role and the tasks that they have to undertake. But that's not all. That's the organization perspective. They also have aspirations about their career, and they want to know, okay, there's a lot of change happening in the world right now. If I were to make a shift in my career to something else, what can that be by leveraging most of my existing skills and capabilities? And so on. How do we get that intrinsic motivation from them? Would be by helping them make that connection. Finally, the HR department would want to understand who to hire for filling up which gaps. How are their plans on not just talent development, recruitment, everything? How is it to be changed, updated to support the business in acquiring the necessary skills and capabilities? A part of that, which will be the L&D responsibility. Now, when I do that, I talk to a lot of organizations around the world, including some of our customers. And I've been interacting the last couple of years and asking them that given that this is being talked about for a long time, why haven't you been able to make this shift? What is it that is acting as a barrier or preventing you from implementing this strategy? And I hear a number of reasons, but the most common ones are they believe that their LMS has limited capability. It does not support features that they would need to operate a skills focused L&D operation. Probably they cannot create skills matrices. They are not able to build personalized plans as needed, and so on and so forth. The second most critical reason that I hear is that this is quite complex. And maybe, therefore, of course, it needs a number of things to be done. And therefore, it will take a lot of time and resources. And they are not sure of the outcome. They don't have the full picture on how it will really turn out to be. And they're reluctant in getting this plan approved and so on. Sometimes they also are constrained by the high cost of execution because a lot of these tasks not only take time, but a lot of effort, which is also cost, right? And there are other challenges as well in terms of integration of platforms, which involves taking support from the IT department and many others. Finally, they're also worried that while we have been operating in a course delivery model format, how is that entire course library, whether produced in-house or outsourced from a library provider or a combination of the two, how can that be used or connected? And again, the LMS appears to be a constraint in not being able to support for many customers. So quite a few challenges, but today this is exactly what we're going to talk about. How do we deal with that? That used to be a problem until now. But with advancement in the technology, in the ability to integrate systems, and particularly with what is possible to be accomplished today with the AI technology, it is possible to actually make this shift much more easily in comparison with what it used to be. So all constraints have fallen, and we are ready to take advantage of these new possibilities. To transform your existing learning stack, you don't need to make a change and migrate all your data, courses, progress, history. No, all that is not required for most of the customers that I talk to, because they have an LMS that can be at least integrated and upgraded in some form. The steps that used to take months or sometimes more than a year, depending on the size and the complexity of the organization, can now take just a few weeks or 3 to 6 months. Obviously, when that happens, the cost of implementing or building all of that will go down significantly, increasing efficiency. And there are tools with which you could actually connect the dots, meaning how can you leverage your assets that you already have and operationalize this system? And let's take a look at that. So there are 4 components to this skills intelligence engine. The first one is having a skills matrix and a database. This is what tells us what is it that the organization needs based on its business plan. The second pillar is the assessment of the workforce's existing skills and capabilities. This is important to compare it with what is required and determine the gaps, and therefore be able to build a plan that will help fill them up. And that is made possible by the third pillar, which is personalized capability development. So how do you build a plan which is personalized? Now, that level of personalization is also important, and that's what we're going to talk about when we get to expanding on that stage. And finally, while all this is happening, like we discussed earlier, how is that every stakeholder gets to see where they are, in what direction they're moving, how fast are they moving, and where is it that they can contribute and collaborate and support this entire initiative. So the architecture for this can be developed in 5 different phases or layers that you can see here. And we can start with the data ingestion, which you already have, which is from the HRIS or the HR information system or the industry data on what kind of skills and capabilities are required by a particular industry to operate, not that goes beyond compliance requirements, but in general. So a variety of that data, if you do not have a skills repository already developed in your organization. This skills inventory is then enhanced, as we'll talk about in a while. And then we do the alignment with the courses or the assets that we have that support the development of these skills or identify gaps in doing so. Then there is a identification of skills gap in the existing workforce, personalized learning and analytics, as we just discussed. So let's dive into each of these phases and learn how they can be accomplished using the advancements in the technology and AI, and a systematic process that needs to be taken for accomplishing it. So when it comes to building the skills matrix, we just discussed about the use of HRIS and industry data and any existing documentation that you may have already developed with respect to skills and capabilities development. What the industry data also helps is in identifying what are the emerging skills that are required. Nowadays, we're talking about the shelf life of skills having dropped significantly, which means we have to be constantly looking at, okay, what are the emerging skills that our workforce should be equipped with? And that data should also keep flowing into the database that is built in the form of the skills matrix. The skills matrix is not one dimensional. It's actually multidimensional. And I have seen a number of platforms that do talk about making the shift towards skills based operation, but they are very basic in terms of the features. And a number of times it is a step in the right direction, but because it is not detailed in a certain manner, the outcomes are not as expected. And sometimes we actually fail just because this foundational step is not done correctly. So, what are the dimensions when building a skills matrix? The first is having a library. That's the source vocabulary of all the skills that the organization needs. This is followed by taxonomy, which talks about giving it some structure, grouping it so that it is, we could reduce probably a list of 5,000 skills that could be grouped into 100 or 50 groups. It would is, you are doing normalization and so on. The third layer or the dimension is ontology, which says, okay, if I were to progress from skill A and acquire skill B, then I need so many other things. What are the prerequisites? What are the dependencies? And so on. So relationships and the meaning gets clarified here. The context is also clarified here, which is a very important thing. A lot of people rely on generic courses, but negotiation in sales versus negotiation internally within a team are two different things. Finally, the capability framework is something that defines what does it, how do you assess the proficiency level? So it could be simply classified into 3 to 4 levels like basic, intermediate, advanced, or there could be other terms required to express the proficiency levels. And each role does not require each type of skill to be at the most advanced level. So when the roles are mapped with the skills, this becomes an important dimension. If all this data does not exist, everything else becomes weak. So moving to the next slide, it talks about what are the stages that turn raw data into the structured matrix. So first, the data is ingested from various sources. AI tool that we have developed could be used to extract the information and determine the skills that are required in that role. The data is normalized and then classified in the form of adding taxonomy related information, making the connections, relationships by using ontology, and finally the proficiency level that gets tagged to it. All along in the tool or the solution that we built, we emphasize keeping the human in the loop for reasons you all know. But the process in which they get involved is made very efficient. That is, while they validate, they can do it not for the entire data set, but we can actually intelligently present limited information which we are not so confident about. And that is what they can validate, change, update to prepare the final matrix. So this is what it really looks like. How does that work? So let's look at a job description for someone who is in a senior delivery lead role. And here it's only a couple of lines from their job description. And the highlighted text is what the AI tool would pick up to interpret the canonical skills that this role is expected to possess for being successful. For instance, the terms delivery lead, complex projects, and related phrases lead to concluding that project management skills are required to succeed in this role. Risk planning leads to determining that risk management looks like that is required as well. And budget tracking means there is some amount of financial management skills that are necessary to succeed in this role. So there is, as you can see, normalization where multiple terms can be used to express the same thing. And based on that, a refined list is presented for verification. So when we do that by using AI and with human in the loop, we observed that in some cases, what could have taken 12 months to do or 7 to 8 months to do can be done within months, or sometimes, depending on the size of the organization and the number of roles and so on, within weeks. And this resolves the challenges that we talked about at the very beginning of the presentation, that we are able to accomplish this more efficiently, so therefore lower cost, and we are able to leverage the data that we already have. Okay. So that's the phase one. Let's look at phase two. That is aligning courses with skills. Now, everybody wants to make sure that the courses, how do we connect them with the skills that are required? Because only then can we help the learners acquire those skills. And we also discussed that the course titles in themselves don't tell us the whole story. The metadata that exists may not be sufficient. And therefore, it is very important that the courses are analyzed beyond the title or brief descriptions. And we built a tool for that that makes it possible. The tool actually, for example, I can take, you have a SCORM package that you can import it into this tool and be able to, the tool will actually extract all the content. Even if there's a video, it will actually pick up the transcript. And then there will be an analysis that will be done of the content, the assessments, and a lot of other things to align them, identify the skills, and build the course metadata. And we're going to take a look at in a couple of slides how that really happens. So we're not just identifying skills, but each course may be addressing more than one skill. So we now are able to tag the courses with a number of skills that they support. And one thing I must clarify at this stage, when I keep saying skills, what I mean is skills and capabilities. And I don't want to say the bigger thing repeatedly. So I'm keeping using the word skills all the time, but it could mean both skills and capabilities. The next thing, the next dimension is coverage depth. You may have a video that is titled project management, and there is a program that is a week-long program with 20 hours, and that is also on project management. But the depth, the coverage, everything is different. And therefore, it is important to understand to what depth, to what level of proficiency does a course take a learner to. And therefore, that level match is also very important. Pedagogical alignment, again, means what is the outcome that could be expected in what context. Okay. So as we spoke about negotiation for somebody in supply chain department versus negotiation for the HR department in some way. So those are all different things. Granularity. So most courses may have information only at the highest level. But imagine that if a course has 5 different skills that it supports, just because it supports one of the skills that is needed by a learner, that entire 5-hour course be assigned to a learner. That is not the right thing. So we need to break it down. So you will also have an ability to break down your assets into modules, lessons, and be able to tag them and see if you could leverage that and enhance them for supporting your skills focused operation. Again, a systematic process is used to turn this course, or rather enhance this course with the nature of metadata that is required. So as we discussed, the course is ingested, decomposed, AI identifies the skills, aligns it with the taxonomy and the proficiency levels, and it gives the confidence tag to whatever output it produces. And the SMEs can focus on the low confidence tags. So let's say, for example, it mapped a module to support one particular skill, but the confidence level is, that's a 35%. Then that could be flagged saying anything below 35% or whatever level you choose should be flagged for review by SME and making the whole process far more efficient. Again, human in the loop, therefore, becomes very important. Here is an example of what happens within a course. Again, we're just looking at the title and probably just a brief description, couple of lines from that. And the highlighted text is used by the AI tool that we have built to look at or identify the skills or the capability that it supports developing, the Bloom's level, which is also an indication of the level of proficiency that it can help achieve, and put a code against that like L3, L4, depending on what your model for determining and classifying levels of proficiency can be. So let me show you how that tool actually looks like by sharing some screenshots. So you can see here, it shows that the content was imported, a course package, and there are several steps that are being shown wherein the package is being, the text is extracted, the audio is extracted, the content from or the text or transcript from videos is also extracted if that is included, and so on. And then it is all converted into a format such as JSON for AI to ingest and process further. Once processed, as we just discussed, it will show a list of suggested skills, like the one that you see here. And as you can see, it would show the level of proficiency that it can help accomplish and the confidence number that is shown in the percentage terms against that, which could be changed. If the SME or the expert connected with the course creation wants to remove or add additional skills from their asset library, the skills matrix, that is also possible through an interface before finalizing the skills mapping of the courses. So as you can see here, what has been accomplished is we now have an idea of how we can leverage our existing learning assets. And therefore, it resolves one of the challenges, a concern that the L&D teams have. How am I going to connect, or how will my existing assets be useful in skills development? And again, it's an enrichment of the courses with the metadata that could have taken months, but can be brought down to a couple of months or just a few weeks, depending on the size of the project. The next thing is finding the skills gaps. Now we know what the organization needs. We also know how we can support that need, or even how we do not have assets to support and build those. But importantly now, what are the gaps? And how do we identify the gaps in the existing workforce? That requires some form of assessment or evaluation and capability profiling. And let's look at that in more detail. So we look at what skills are missing. What is the gap from what is the desired level? But most importantly here, because the first two possibly seem to be easier to accomplish, but the third one is a very important subject in itself. Maybe a separate webinar may be required to discuss this. But at a very high level, the issue with this is that traditionally LMSs do not have a correct measurement of the proficiency or the skill level of the target audience. It is measured by a post-course assessment, which is not the correct measure. The quiz is not the right measure or assessment of something that could be assessed by looking at the behavior or the actual performance. And that data, a lot of time, has no way to get into the LMS. But with the advent of XAPI and other standards, it is now possible to pull in a lot of data or combine that data with what the LMS already collects and be able to produce what we call a trustworthy signal. It could include a self-assessment from the learners. It could include the feedback from the manager, it could have feedback from other performance data or operational metrics. And each of them actually have a different confidence level, in my view. I would not put a lot of weightage on the accuracy of self assessments, but I would put more weightage on other signals. And therefore, this layer becomes extremely crucial to think about and build. The final thing is important from an organizational perspective because you will discover that there are so many different skills that need to be built. But what is the priority and be able to build according to that? And for that, now we can see that we've built a data pipeline that captures the signals that matter by using technologies like XAPI and integrating various platforms that the organization has. And therefore, now is what we have a completely data driven system, which is not only used to run the engine, but also, as we looked at, the need to inform different stakeholders with the information that they need to make this program successful. So I know we're running short of time, so I'll go through some of the other slides a bit faster. And of course, I would be happy to um, respond to your queries for additional information or any questions. Even after the webinar, you can send it over email to me. Just taking this break just to let you know that in the next few minutes, we'll wrap up and be able to sort of uh, accomplish the objectives of the webinar. So phase 4 is how do you give the personalized learning? So given that we have combined a lot of factors, the information, it can be now useful to identify which courses can be assigned to which learners. Again, this is multidimensional. Why? Because it is not just about the courses. Every learner has their own constraint in terms of, let's say, we're talking about frontline uh, workforce. They may not have access to devices all the time. They may not be free to undertake a course at any point of time. The recommendations will turn out to be bad simply because their environment does not support them undertaking those interventions. And so it is very important to decide the right modality. It is also important that if you are recommending that they pick up any instructor led course, they are available at the location, at the time, and so on. And of course, the ontology in the skills also tells us in what order they should pick up. It is not listing, of all the courses that they should undertake, but a plan that tells them, okay, first you need to build this skill. After that, you need to progress to this one, and so on. But most LMSs or other products fail because they end up only producing a list of courses connected with the skills and or give a same plan to all the learners in the same role. So the level of personalization is extremely weak. Again, a systematic process, as I just described, would be, in a similar form is applied here. And what it results into is even if two learners were to have the same gaps, you may find that their plan may be different in terms of when they should be taking the course, which course they may be taking, because the course formats may match their particular preferences, and that is chosen depending on how rich your course library is and your interventions are. And so all of that information, richer the information, better the personalization. But it is not absolutely necessary that you do everything here. You get started with small and then expand the metadata and the logic with which the personalized plans are built so that it gets better by the day. So it transforms from a gap to a growth plan where everybody gets to see, okay, this is what I am doing, this is what I need to do next, and so on. There is no content overload. They are able to see why they need to pick up something now, why is it relevant, or how it can help them in making the progress in their career. So it resolves number of challenges yet again. Finally, the analytics. And what I'm going to do is actually jump into showing we've collected a lot of data that is operationalizing and running this engine. Let us look at some screens or dashboards that actually show what these analytics look like and understand how valuable it could be for a variety of stakeholders. Okay. So, for example, this is an executive view. The executive leadership can look at various roles and the level of proficiency that the existing team members have. Let's say there is a senior learning specialist, they are 18 and their average competency is pretty good beyond a benchmark that the organization may have set. But there are some other roles who do not have, and those need to be addressed on a priority. One can also prioritize a list of capabilities irrespective of the role and use that information to guide the skills and capability development plans at an enterprise level. It could also be then looked upon at a regional level, because it may be possible that some skills are better in a certain region while there's a huge gap in some other region, and that needs to be addressed. This is a screen that I think most executive leaders would be interested in, because it tells them, okay, how is this really working? So they may be able to see the correlations with the typical business KPIs. That, okay, is there an impact on compliance incidents? Are customer support requests going down, or are they getting resolved faster? Or what is the customer satisfaction score that is coming through, and so on. Now, whatever you choose that is connected with the skills required of the business plan, those correlations could be made and presented here. Moving forward to the L&D effectiveness, they will be able to say, okay, our library currently supports X number of skills. These are the skills that are not supported, and we need to expand our program or the library to support those. They could also look at signals that indicate that learners are not completing the courses, dropping off early, or other feedback that could also be captured, such that they could manage the quality of the courses. They could retire certain courses. There could be courses that could be upgraded. Or sometimes it's just a matter of wrong course being given to the wrong person, and they need to look at the personalization engine. So one needs to look at this data more carefully and take some very important decisions. Finally, managers, they can know, okay, how well their teams are equipped, or team members. If some team members are struggling, are not making sufficient effort, then they could talk to them to see what constraints they are having and how they could be supported, and so on. So these kind of insights could be very useful to get functional support, which is very crucial, because learning is never a single event. A lot depends on what happens after they take the course and they start trying to apply those skills at work. They also want to know the speed at which the skills are being acquired, because they've committed to a plan, and the plan only succeeds if the skills grow at a certain pace and prepares the team to succeed and in actual work. The learner would be able to see where they are on target with respect to the skills expected, where are the gaps, and depending on the data privacy, you could even compare with other peers without identifying them, of course, and saying, okay, how do I compare with my peers, which will indicate how well I can grow in this job? Or another view where, depending on their existing skills, one could recommend, okay, you could leverage this majority of these skills and or think of shifting to another role. And for that, what additional skills will be required, and building a plan for that. So having said that, you understand that this is a very comprehensive skills intelligence engine that could be set up by use of certain tools that can help establishing the layers, putting in the data that is required to operationalize it, making it run, and ensuring that every stakeholder is involved in a transparent manner and is able to support and contribute to this transformation. Only then can this be expected to be successful. So coming to the close, I agree, this is not a small task. And should you try to do it organization wide from day one? My answer is no. I believe that you should audit where you are today. Think of doing a pilot for one function or a role within that function. Set up a part of the system, try it out, learn from that, and then scale it up. So the first pilot could be actually done within 3 to 6 months, which will give not only the L&D team the confidence they need to scale it up, learn from that experience, but also get data using which they could get the organizational buy-in that is needed to scale up the program. So I would recommend this to be taken up in a phased manner. So with that, I would be happy to take up questions that you may have. Please put them in the chat window and I can look at them. And okay, so one of the questions here is that they have an old LMS. There's an old LMS, and how can that be upgraded? So some of the key questions, I mean, the key things that you may want to look at in your very old LMS would be, does it support XAPI? Does it have uh, an API through which you could connect and integrate it with the other uh, platforms or the middleware? If the answer to that is yes, your problem is solved. The LMS can be enhanced or upgraded. The question is, the next question is, okay, what if we don't have an LRS? Great question, because LRS, which is a learning record store, some of you who may not be aware of what that means, it's a database in which the records of learning activities can get stored with the use of what we know as XAPI. And the LRS setup is very straightforward and can be accomplished within weeks again. So I do not see that as a major constraint as well. Okay, there's a question about building versus buying. That should they build what we just demonstrated, that we have a lot of tools that are used to build these layers and operationalize it, versus existing LMSs or LXPs that promise or have features that allow that. I think a careful comparison of what you really need and what is supported. That is why the audit step is what I had recommended to begin with. The first step is audit. And once you identify that, you will be able to determine whether enhancing or buying additional modules within your existing LMS may help, or enhancing it with add-on components, as we just spoke about, would be useful. But I do know, no matter what, building a custom component and using it would be an investment for a very long time, and would match your existing requirements without you having to compromise in a big way. Another question that I see is, could this process help employees and faculty upskill their proficiency in digital accessibility to meet the ADA Title II compliance? So we're talking about a skill development or enhancement. And the model for enhancing the skill applies to any type of skill. So if I understand this question correctly, yes, once we are able to find the skill gaps with the measurements and the solutions, the interventions, the courses that are needed to build the requisite skills and connect the two, it can be done at scale using an intelligent system like this. The final question that I'll take here is, what about data privacy and other such considerations? Yes, we are in this process talking about collecting a lot of information about each of the learners, what their performance is, what the skills are, and so on. A lot of that data is already being collected. Now, when it comes to reporting, analytics, and so on, or sharing that information with other team members is concerned, we must be mindful of the policies of the organization and the reports and certain other functions that we build should be customized accordingly. I would seriously recommend that one should look at a lot of these other aspects that are important considerations when designing and implementing this kind of a skills intelligence engine. Any other questions? If not, I think we're just 3 minutes past our planned time. And my email ID here is displayed. And you can also reach out to our general email ID and also the e-learning at upsidelearning.com. Feel free to reach out to us with any more information or questions that you have. And we'll make sure that we send you the link to the recording of this session in case you want to review it once again. With that, thank you so much for your time. And we truly appreciate your interest and looking forward to interacting with you once again in the next session.